I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Hello. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Roundtable and Friday for the Sabby Show. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going to start tonight off with a direct action event. Scott is here. Scott, will you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yep. First, I want to say thank you, Sabby, for having me on. Like you said, my name is Scott Denoyer. I'm a Medicare for All activist after I lost my son a few years ago, 3 years ago, almost to the day. And I want to, if it's okay with you, Sabby, I just want to tell your guests what happened and why I'm involved in this. It was about February of 2019. My oldest son had come in to move in with me. He was 29 years old. And he had some domestic disputes, with his girlfriend, who was the mother of his child. And because of that, there was some legal issues. There was an order of protection put between them. He couldn't communicate with her, and this is important to what happened throughout the rest of what happened. About 3 weeks after Danny moved in with me, he come home to me and he goes, "Pops, I went to get my medicine refill today and found out that my insurance had been canceled." I'm like, "Okay, Danny, it's not that big of a deal. How much is it?" And he told us that the medication was $250, which is a big deal because I don't have $250 today. And I would go through a whole lot more hell to get that medication now if I could. But, so I told Danny, I was like, "All right, Danny, well, you've got an appointment with your therapist in a couple of weeks. I'm sure she can help you out. In the meantime, we'll try to come up with the money, and you need to get a hold of Fidelis Care and find out what happened." Now, the medication Danny was on was risperidone. He was using it for anger issues, and the medication was working. He had a medical condition. He sought help and was given treatment that was working for him. He was on Medicaid. Fidelis Care was part of the ACA's managed Medicaid expansion. And the founder of Fidelis Care was a Father Patrick Frawley, an ordained priest of the Brooklyn Catholic Diocese. He sold Fidelis Care to Centene in 2018 for $3.8 billion, still maintaining the title of priest. So a few weeks, Danny didn't call Fidelis Care right away. He waited a few days, like most of our kids do. And when he called, he found out that he missed a $20 payment to his managed Medicaid plan that he wasn't aware of. He wasn't aware of it because he couldn't contact his home address. He didn't have his phone. If they sent an email, that email might have been what could have saved his life. Risperidone has a known suicidal risk from withdrawals. Produced by Janssen Pharmaceuticals, owned by Johnson & Johnson, they've already been sued for liability issues regarding risperidone, including underscoring or underplaying the suicidal risk, as well as, of all things, male breast growth. So on April 9th, just a few weeks after Danny ran out of his medication, I see his suicide note on Facebook. And for those with suicidal trigger warnings, I got to give you a heads up. This is really heavy. So what Danny says to us was, I just want everyone to know that I love them. I'm saying goodbye. This world wasn't meant for me. Maybe the next life will be better. I super glued my seatbelt shut. I double checked and I don't have the strength to open it. And I choose death by drowning because I can't get above this pain. I'm sorry for hurting those who care. This is selfish, I'm sure. But I'm staring at the water for hours now, and I've made my decision. Daniel and Hazel, I'm so fucking sorry. He drove his truck into the Mohawk River. I saw his post something like 36 seconds after he posted it. And my wife was sitting across the kitchen table from me. My granddaughter was right next to me. I screamed out what happened, what I was reading. And he had a picture of the cab of his truck overlooking the water. I didn't know he was at the river. I live 5 minutes from Saratoga Lake, so I assumed that's where he was, And I figured if I could get to him in time, I'd be able to save him, So I jumped in my car and I raced down the lake. And after about 20 minutes, I realized, I'm just looking for bubbles, muddy water or something. But 20 minutes later, I realized there's no way any human could have survived that long. And I had to make the decision to turn around and go home and tell my wife that our son is dead because he missed a $20 payment to a corporation that made $60.1 billion in 2018 by denying Medicaid patients health care. A priest sells his company to a corporation that's already been sued for denying the poorest people among us health care, knowing it's resulting in their deaths. This ain't right. Just because we're poor, we're disposable for $20.
Yep. You guys see why we need Medicare for all in this country?
And it's not just the poor. I mean, we've all heard about Amy Villela, who is running into Nevada. Her daughter Shalyn, they were not, poor. They're not. I don't think they're well off, but they're not poor. Well, actually, no. Amy, I think, was working as a CFO of an insurance company when she lost Shalyn. And Shalyn was lost because she went to get checked out for what she thought to be a blood clot. And she was on birth control, which was in her medical reports. She said that I think her father had sickle cell or a chance for sickle cell. I'm not sure of which. And that she was going to drive for 22 hours. And the ER doctor said to her, well, what's your health insurance? And Shalyn's like, well, I'm between jobs, so I'm not really sure. And the doctor responded, well, Shalyn, these tests are thousands of dollars and you don't have it. Shalyn is gone now. Amy knew that first thing when she woke up this morning. It's the first thing she thought of when she woke up yesterday morning, and the day before, and it'll be the first thing she thinks of tomorrow morning. I know. Any single parent that's lost a child, that's the first thing that's on your head when you wake up every morning. And for Amy and I, it's because some company needed to make some money. Not because there wasn't the treatment to save our children, but because somebody needed to make money. So every morning we have to wake up with this pain. Every morning, Danny's children will never see their father because somebody needed to make money.
Yep. Yeah. And Scott, I know I've told you this before, but I'm really sorry for your loss. It's such a corrupt, greedy system that we have in this country. And it's really frustrating having lived abroad and have seen other countries not have to deal with this because they guarantee healthcare to everyone in those countries. It's just so corrupt. And I just want people to understand that it's not even about taking people's health insurance away, which is what, opponents will try to tell you. They're going to take people's health insurance away. It's not even about that. It's about serving the pharmaceutical companies and serving the insurance business and making sure that they get their profits instead of actually making sure that the American people have health care and have coverage and are able to go to the doctor. And most people that I have talked to that don't go to the doctor don't go because they don't have health insurance and they know how much it's going to cost them just for a doctor's visit. It's a terrible system, and the fact that this should be the number one issue that is brought to the platform. This could be the number one thing that Joe Biden could do today. He could do this by executive order. You do not need Congress to approve this for you. And Scott, I'm so glad that you came on, and there's a new direct action event that Scott is and I want to go ahead and make sure I put the link to that in the chat. And Scott, you want to tell everyone about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This is the event that I had envisioned in October of 2019, only 6 months after I lost Danny. It's actually how I met Amy. I reached out to her and asked her how to organize a protest. I wanted to have a protest in front of Fidelis Care. At the time, I thought Patrick Frawley was still the CEO of Fidelis, because when we lost Danny, of course, I'm doing my research and I'm doing Google searches, and I'd found that Father Frawley was the CEO of Fidelis Care for $4.9 million a year. What didn't show up in all of these searches was that 4 months before we lost Danny, they were so enthralled with Patrick Frawley that Centene, after buying Fidelis for $3.8 million, gave him a promotion to now VP, and you're going to love this title, Social Responsibilities of Centene. So the priest is selling his title that he's a priest of social responsibilities. He's going to be the responsible person to make sure that this company does the right thing. And selling Medicaid patients contracts that will deny them care, and he profits to the tune of $5.9 million a year as a priest. So this event, what I'm doing is, there was a Catholic teaching, and I know because I've heard it from so many of the elderly Catholic folk, that aren't you worried about Danny's soul? I'm like, what? Well, the unforgivable sin. If somebody takes their own life, it's a blasphemy against God, and he'll never be allowed in the gates of heaven and condemned to purgatory for eternity. This is an actual Catholic teaching. I believe they stopped teaching this now, but there are a lot of people that still believe in it because people like Father Frawley used to teach it. So my point is that Father Frawley is denying mental health patients every single day medications with a known suicidal risk. He is 100% guilty of that unforgivable sin that he used to preach about, or his church at least used to preach about. So the title of this event is The Unforgivable Sin of Legalized Manslaughter for Profit. On April 9th, the 3rd anniversary of Danny's death, I'm going to be in front of the true death panel doors, because we're going to be in front of the data processing center for Fidelis Care, the epicenter of claim denials. When we hear about death panels, this is where there's a death panel. My demand is for Father Frawley to step down as VP of Centene. If he is any man of God, then he'll step down, and not only step down, but he is to join us in our fight for single-payer universal health care on both national and state level. I want him to fight for Medicare for all to replace his current employer, Centene, and I want him to call for the New York Health Act to replace his own company, Fidelis Care, just like did Wendell Potter from Cigna.
Yep.
I believe it was Wendell Potter this was Dr. Jarvis's quote, that insurance companies would rather make a profit than take care of a patient. They would rather us die than see us, than them lose a profit. If Mr. Frawley does not want to step down and he loves his position as VP Social Responsibilities at Centene, then I'm demanding instead that he renounce his title of priest, because no man of God would ever profit off the poorest and among us on Medicaid by denying them the needed medical attention that they need to survive. $5.9 million a year that man receives by denying Medicaid patients. And what my ask is to everybody watching, if you're anywhere near the Buffalo area, please go to the link, say you're going to join us. I sent out a tweet this morning, and I couldn't have been more honest about it. It said, every morning, the first thing I think of when I wake up is Danny's not here. I haven't spoken to my son in 3 years. First thing I think of every morning. I can't save Danny. I'm not doing this for my health care. I do this so that tomorrow morning, everyone else can wake up with their children instead of tears like me. That's why I do this. So I need you to come help me fight to save your children. I just need you there to tell Father Frawley, you can't kill any more of our kids for your money.
Well said. And this event is April 9th, Saturday, April 9th at 2 p.m. The location is Fidelis Building, 480 Cross Point Parkway, Amherst, New York. I know Afeni, for those of you who are familiar with Afeni, she is going to be one of the speakers at this event. So, and you guys know Afeni is fire. Definitely, if you can make it there, if you're in the area, please come out and support.
Now, we also have Ursula, which is the co-director for Campaign for New York Health. She will be speaking at the event as well. Teresa McCollman is also running for Senate. The New York Health Act has actually already passed the Assembly here in New York 4 times. This past session was the first time that we had the Senate majority, and Senator Andrea Cousins had shelved the health committee before the New York Health Act can make it through, because we had the votes this year. So because it would pass, she shelved the health committee to stop it. Well, we need people like Teresa McCollman in the Senate to put pressure on Andrea Cousins, because sure as hell I already have, and she's ignoring me. She jumped on that trolley at the New York State Fair and sped off quick to make sure she didn't have to talk to me. So we need people that she can't run away from in the Senate getting onto her. The other thing we also have going on is there are a total of 6 solidarity events going on across the country being coordinated with this. In Sacramento, California, there is one being held on the courthouse steps. Then, there's a courthouse. I will have to get that information out. sorry, Sakura. Sakura Forest is the one hosting that one. Then in Tacoma, Washington, Laura Fielding is hosting one out there. There's going to be a candlelight vigil in Fayetteville, Arkansas at 7 p.m. And that will be shared on Twitter. Then in Albany, New York, only 40 miles from my house, there's Jessica is holding one out in Albany, New York at the same time, 2 p.m. That's going to be at the Capitol. And then also the New York City DSA is hosting a bike rally. Theirs was already being hosted for the New York Health Campaign, except for the fact that they are also going to incorporate the vigil portion of my event with theirs, where we're going to have a poetry reading. And I believe I got them all, but I could be missing some.
Awesome. Guys, definitely, I'll put the link in the chat again. If you can make it to the event, definitely go out there and support Scott, and not just Scott, but everybody in this country who is fighting for healthcare, because this has been a long journey. I know a lot of us probably woke up to it during Bernie Sanders' campaign, but some of us in this country have been dealing with this issue for a long time. And I think that we really need to show support for these events as much as we can. Scott, where can everyone find you?
I'm mostly on Twitter. I have 3 different Twitter accounts. My first original one is Scott Desno. I was proud to have that one shut down, but when I got into it with Deborah Messing.
She's a piece of work.
Indeed. That, if you remember right, when she got into it with Nina Turner a while back, and then that's when she called out her black friend on Nina Turner. And Nina's like, oh, no, you did it. So, yeah, Deborah and I got into it, and I added her to my thread of legalized manslaughter for profit. So I got actually shut down for actually spamming because I added a tweet to the same thread every single day for a year and a half, which that technically speaking is spamming. especially being I had people like Deborah Messing and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris all tagged in that. Every single day they got the same tweet tagged to them. And sorry, anyway, get back on track. The next one would be at Denoyer Scott. That would be the one that I usually use the most because I don't want to get the original one shut down again, mostly because I don't want to lose those stories that were shared with me on that thread, that account. And then the last one would be at NY Red Berets. And that's the chapter of the New York, the Red Berets that I said I had started. Also, anybody that I can always use speakers, anybody that wants to speak at my event and wants to reach out to me, I'm going to share my email, scottdesno@gmail.com. Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to listen. Oh, the other thing I'm doing is anybody that wants to share a story and is not able to make it to the event, I would be honored to be their voice, and I will read their testimony for them if they can't make it. I know not everybody can do what I do. I wish I couldn't. I wish I didn't have to do what I do. But I will be your voice for you. And if you can't make it to the event, I'd be happy to share your loved one's story so that their name is heard, their story is heard.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Yes, we need healthcare for everyone in this country. I've heard so many stories. I've had stories myself when I didn't have health insurance. It's such a corrupt, greedy system, and that needs to be the number one thing that's happening right now. I'm so tired of it. I'm so tired of like these companies just taking so much money and so much taking life from people. I'm so tired of it. All right. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Here we go. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you want to become a Sabby patron, you can. I have 4 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, and Ultimate. All of their names are listed here. Thank you so much, guys, for your help. I really do appreciate it. And their names are also scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are we talking about tonight? Let me go ahead and share my thumbnail here. Doobie doobie doo. Give me a second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this should be a pretty interesting night. I got a couple of stories here. They are not connected, but here we go. Tonight, I am talking about NOMIKI KONST is challenged on Fox News. What was that discussion about? I'm going to show you. I'm also going to talk about AOC versus KHANNA. Oh, buddy. And this just proves my point about the Democratic Party and where progressives are headed in that fight. And I'm going to talk about Black News Channel is shut down. What happened there? Does this have to deal with censorship, or is it something more? So I want to go ahead and get started with Black News Channel shut down. So let's go ahead and get into this story. Give me just a second here. Okay, I can't click on that for some reason. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, here we go. Black News Channel shuts down days after high ratings. I have to log back into the VNC thing. Give me just a second. All right, here we go. The Black News Channel has pulled the plug after the 2-year-old venture failed to meet payroll and lost the backing of its biggest investor. Prince O'Hare, the company's president and CEO, told employees Friday in a memo that the news network was ceasing live production and would file for bankruptcy. This is not good news, you guys. BNC was available in some 50 million homes with cable and satellite, but had failed to attract many viewers. The network, founded in 2020 by former GOP Congressman J.C. Watts, hold on to that point that it was founded by a congressman, just hold on to that for a second, hired more than 250 Black journalists and production personnel last year in a relaunch following an investment by Jacksonville Jaguars owner Shahid Khan. But it was consistently losing money despite 2 rounds of layoffs, and Khan decided to stop investing in it further. It is currently 3 weeks short of payroll. Now, that's coming from someone who's a spokesman from the company. So let me stop there for a second, and I want to comment. Okay. I did find it somewhat concerning that this news network was founded by a congressman. I did not know that. I have not watched BNC a lot, but I have seen it here and there. The reason why I didn't watch it on the regular is because I realized it was more of a liberal kind of take, kind of taking up for Joe Biden here and there and taking up for Obama. I'm going to show you one of those clips in just a second. So for me, I was like, they still trying to tell you to vote for Democrats. And I wasn't really feeling that. But they did focus on Black news and Black issues. And we didn't really have that for the most part, not on, cable news when it comes to that. The other problem is that the investor was the same person who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, the NFL football team. The Jacksonville Jaguars are not doing well. I don't know if you guys are into sports, but I am into sports and I pay very close attention to football, especially since I have a fantasy football team that I do every year. They are not a good team. So the fact that that guy invested in this channel just kind of gave me concern because I'm like, I don't know, dude. He invested in a bad football team. I'm serious. If you go to Jacksonville, and I know people that live in Jacksonville, they will tell you that more people will come to see the opposing team play than to see the Jacksonville Jaguars play. I kid you not. That's how bad Jacksonville is. They had a couple 2 seasons in a row where they were pretty good. They made it to the playoffs. They went up against us, the Patriots, we beat them. But they went up against us, but they're not, no. So anyway, what that said to me is that he tends to make bad investments. Now, does that say anything about the talent that was on BNC? No, I thought the talent on BNC was great. I thought the journalists that they had were good. Again, they were still giving those kind of liberal talking points. But when it came to their actual talent on the screen, I thought that they were good. He decided to pull his investment. Now, were they getting high ratings like CNN or MSNBC or Fox News? No. Most people that I've talked to didn't even know BNC was a thing. I kid you not. I think the only reason I knew about it is because I do this show. So I do a lot of research and BNC is one of those ones that comes up for me. But most people I talked to didn't know about it. And that has to deal with marketing and advertising and the communications team. Why was this network not marketed and pushed out as heavily as you see CNN? Oh, hell, I'll even go for a little bit more so-called independent, okay? TYT. TYT, I felt, is marketed better than BNC. That goes back to the people who are on the marketing team. I think that when they were thinking of the masses, they did not feel that this type of news, because they focused on Black news, that it was as important. And let's be honest here, let's be real. How many of you in the chat, I'm looking over to the chat, how many of you in the chat knew about them before tonight? I'll look over. Here we go. Mr. says never heard of them. California said never heard of BNC. Jay says this is my first time hearing about BNC. See what I mean? So, the marketing was a big problem. One of the journalists that they had on that network, and I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but he's in the thumbnail. Mike was actually on Real Housewives of Atlanta. He just got married to Cynthia. So I felt like there were so many ways that this channel could have been marketed. And I think that if they would have brought in people who had more of a lefty socialist perspective, I think it could have taken off even more. But of course, they don't want to hear those talking points. They don't want you to hear from people like that. Not saying they should have brought me, because again, like I told you, it was a little bit more on the liberal side. But I think it would have been better if they had different perspectives on that channel. I'm going to go back into the article. A former CNN executive took over in the relaunch last year. Problem number 3. They let someone who worked at CNN take over. I don't know what else to say there. BNC brought on contributors like Charles Blow, columnist at the New York Times, and commentator Mark Lamont Hill. Now, Mark Lamont Hill has a large following on Twitter. So again, why was the message not getting out about this channel? Correspondents were stationed in New York, LA, Chicago, Atlanta, and Philly. You got 5 locations there in major metropolitan areas. The end came even as BNC recorded its biggest audience ever this week with its live coverage of the Judiciary Committee hearing for U.S. Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. He told employees that their contributions have been remarkable, but due to challenging market conditions and global financial pressures, we have been unable to meet our financial goals, and the timeline afforded to us has run out. Establishing a network is particularly tough at a time when consumers have so many choices and many are cutting cable and satellite cords. I'm going to speak about that in just a second. Remember that we built something here. BNC or something very close to it will surely return at some point because the world needs it. And all of you have proven it can be done. News of BNC shutdown was first reported by the LA Times. The National Association of Black Journalists said Friday that it was looking at ways to help members that were thrown out of work by the shutdown. So again, this goes back to similar thing I said when RT shut down. All these people lost their jobs. I just told you they had hired over 250 people. All these people are now unemployed. I bet you Joe Biden won't include that in his unemployment numbers. So let's talk about the cable and satellite cords, because I think that's important to mention here. I keep telling people are turning away from cable news, partially because they're not buying the BS. They're not buying the propaganda as much anymore. Also because people are getting rid of cable altogether. It's too expensive. I know. I can't remember the last time I had cable. I use other streaming services. It's so much cheaper. But people are cutting the ties with cable, man. How are some of these companies charging people over $100 a month for cable? Also, people are turning more towards independent news like me, like RBN, like other independent media that you can find on YouTube. And let's be real, you can watch me for free. I don't make you pay anything. I don't even have a members only video section. You can watch me for free. So if we're covering the same stories that they're covering, but we're also giving you another perspective, and we're telling you pieces of information that they are leaving out because they are owned by a network and we're not. Why would you pay over $100 a month to hear propaganda when you can watch a lot of us on YouTube for free? Let's just be real. And Fox News and CNN, they know that. That's why they started pumping out their content more on YouTube. And I still believe till this day, that's the reason why YouTube got rid of the dislike button or wouldn't show it. They don't show the count to you anymore because they don't want you to see how many people were disliking the videos from mainstream media. And they had a lot of dislikes. So that's that. But I really don't think that the care was there when it came to this network. I don't think they were as much invested in this as they would have been MSNBC or CNN. Again, you're catering to a certain niche. It's Black news. It's about the Black community. But that wasn't to say that other people who are not Black are not watching it. There's people that watch me. All of you aren't Black. There's people that watch RBN. All of our subscribers at RBN aren't Black. But the lack of care just wasn't there. Even when it came to, like I said, the marketing and communication, most people did not know this network even existed until the story came out that they shut down. And they were on cable. Now, I told you something about the message that I got from that channel, that they were still kind of vote blue no matter who. I want to show you a clip from BNC. This was a story that I actually reported on this a long time ago. This is over a year old. But Cornel West was on BNC, and they were talking to Cornel West about Barack Obama's failure with defunding the police and how Barack Obama militarized the police. Well, actually, Cornel West was saying that part. They were defending Obama. Watch this. I have this clip. Don't laugh at me, by the way, because this is over a year ago. My camera wasn't as good, but here we go. I want you to hear what the talking points were like on BNC. Check this out. American people, and particularly this situation with Black people, he was not vocal enough the way that he should have been. I'm going to go back to the video.
Work was never taken seriously. It was, we got structural constraints. Black people always got structural constraints. Always got.
All right, well, but I just want to get this. I want to get this on the table. But you do recognize and incorporate into your loving critique the idea that there was just tremendous opposition to him as a president.
Absolutely.
So what they're talking about here is the fact that Barack Obama wrote a letter last year basically saying that he didn't do some of the things he should have done when it came to policing in this country because he had constructual restraints or institutional constraints. That was his excuse. Cornel West wasn't buying it, and I wasn't buying it either. So here we go.
As a Black person, but also as the first, a Black president, that there was these incredible constraints. And when he moved out even a little bit, saying that people were, acted stupidly by going into Skip Gates' house and arresting a man in his own house, there was just tremendous backlash against that. And that's a very modest statement. We do recognize that, right?
I do. But every Black man and every Black woman who has any sense of being free knows that when they're in a position, you do have to transgress some things and you have to pay certain kind of costs. If for example, he's only going to be there 4 years, then you go down swinging. It don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing. You go down swinging, man. Think of your job at the New York Times. If every move you made had to be calculated on structural constraints, man, you would still be commenting in ways that be unbeknownst to you and me. You have to have some freedom. You have to have a willingness to tell the truth and pay a cost. That's true for presidents. That's true for professional managers. It's true for athletes. It's true for professors. It's true for TV hosts across the board. And that's all we were asking for Barack Obama. We just said you have to try and push to the end. You cannot punt on the second down, brother. You punt on the fourth
All right.
down.
So
you go as far as you can get to the touchdown, and then you punt. But he got used to punting on second down. Everybody want to protect. Well, he did all he could do. Now he can do all he can.
All right, put your professor hat on. If you had to give Barack Obama a grade in his relationship to Black America during his presidency,
listen to this,
including the structural constraints that he now discusses, what would that grade be for Black people?
Well, let's put it this way: that the lowest grade on the Dean's list is a B-. I would give him a C. So he's not on the Dean's list at all. He's not Summa, he's not Magna, and he's not Kuma. He's old audit. I give him a C. And we know I'd give him a C for his presence, his poise, his brilliance that had symbolic impact. That's symbolic on me. But on the ground, brother, in terms of the suffering of Black people, in terms of the poverty of Black people, in terms of greed of Wall Street, in terms of the drones dropped on folk all around the world. No, grandmama say we can't allow just that symbolic stuff to hide and conceal the concrete stuff. So,
all right, I'm going to stop there. Yikes. You got to love Dr. West. He always keeps it real. So I'm going to give my opinion about what I just saw in the video. So the first thing that I noticed is like, notice how the host. I'm sorry. I got to. Oh, wait. You probably do need to hear this part. I'm sorry. This is like, bad. Notice how the host was just trying to pull Dr. West back into, oh, but come on. You got it. Come on. He was the first Black president. Give him a little leeway here. Come on. Come on. And that is actually what like CNN and MSNBC did during Obama's presidency, and they still continue to do. That's what they do with Joe Biden right now. Got to get. So that was the point that I was trying to make in that video. And this is what I was trying to tell you guys. That is something that I did notice about that network. It's like when it came to Barack Obama, it seemed like they were still willing to make excuses for him. When it came to Joe Biden, it was just kind of like, well, yeah, Joe Biden did the crime bill, but he's a lesser two evils. So they were still kind of having the same kind of talking points as CNN and MSNBC. And to me, I was just kind of like, man, I was hoping to find something or hear something a little bit more further to the left, something a little bit more radical, but I wasn't getting that from BNC. And I think that was a mistake. I think if you're going to sound like MSNBC and CNN, then people are just going to watch them, especially if it's called Black News Channel. Then some people are going to be like, oh, if it's only Black news, then I'm not supposed to watch it, or if it's not for me. That's actually not true, but that's how some people would feel. But if I'm going on to something like that, I'm expecting to hear something different. I'm expecting to hear a different sound. And I kept hearing those same liberal talking points. That's why it was not one of my regular go-tos to listen to. And I think that was a mistake. It was disappointing to me. Right. Focus Within knows what's up. We already have shitty CNN. So there's that. Someone mentioned Roland Martin, Golden Silence, and Sabby Sabs. Do you ever watch Roland Martin? He's the biggest scambo shilling for Dems. It took me 2 minutes to figure him out. Exactly. He's another one. That's why I don't watch him either. Listen, I am all for diversity and inclusion. I'm all for, like, if someone wants to have an all Black news channel, go ahead, go for it. But if you're going to do that, please don't sound like the other people that we already have out there. Please don't sound like CNN. Please don't sound like MSNBC. Please don't sound like Fox News. Bring something different to the table. And this is why a lot of people are just they're tuning it out. They're like, screw this, man. I'm going to watch independent media. I want to hear something different. That's just my take on it. I'll be real with you. I've said this before. I am further to the left than Bernie Sanders. Some people might call me radical. I call myself a realist. I just keep it real. I call myself a realist. And I am not a neoliberal. So even though the channel may be talking about Black issues, if I see you twist it at the end of the segment and twist it back towards voting for Democrats, you have lost me. That's a big problem. So that was something I wish they would have done differently. There's something else that he does in this clip I want to show you really quick. Let me scoot to the Bizak. I look like I'm 12 in this picture. This is really bad. Oh boy. That's back when I used Zoom, you guys. I used to do my videos with Zoom. I thought there was another part. I talked for that long? No? Wow, I talked for a long time. I thought there was another part. Oh, in the beginning. Okay. Okay. This part.
What do you make of this last comment about him saying that he didn't have more of a presence in those particular cases because there were institutional constraints that prohibited him from having more of a presence?
My brother reminds me of the words of one of the grand figures of the American theater, Ren Troy Brown in Los Angeles, where he used to say, "It is as weak as pre-sweetened Kool-Aid, that we may have been born at night, but not last night." There's no doubt that every politician has structural constraints, but there's a variety of different ways when you have the will to raise your voice and push for policies, even if you're unable to execute those policies. So when it comes to Wall Street, he could say, "Don't worry, I will protect you." Well, that's structural constraints, but he's making choices. When it comes to drones, he's dropping drones on folk all around the world, 563 of them in 8 years, right? That's structural constraints. You're still making choices. When it comes to militarizing the police departments, that took place under Barack Obama. That's why we had a Black Lives Matter movement under Black president, Black attorney general, Black Homeland Security. So that Black official power couldn't translate on the ground to saving our brothers and sisters who were being shot and brutalized. And we know he's not a messiah, but there was no fire. There was no backbone. There was no attempt to reshape the whole climate of opinion. It was accommodating itself step by step to what the institutional procedures were. Well, you say Black folk were dependent on institutional procedures, brother. We'd still be living in slavery right now, believe me.
Right. I do want to say this. He was specifically saying that he was recognizing a separation between his administration, the executive branch, and the Department of Justice. He didn't want to put his hand on the scale. I mean, just as a clarification.
So yeah, you can't. I'm sorry. For me, you just can't. We have to stop making excuses for Obama. We have to stop. I'm sorry. Cryptician does have a point. Lee Richard, I hate to keep bringing this up, but not everybody at BNC were liberals. Mark Lamont Hill is a longtime outspoken socialist and Green Party member, supporter. He was never a liberal. That's a good point. That's a good one to bring up, Cryptician. I think for me, it was just the overall message. It was the overall message from the network. But the point that I want to drive home here is the fact that the gentleman that invested in the network pulled his investment. And so the money wasn't there. And why did he pull his investment? He didn't feel it was gaining enough traction, but it told you in the article they had over 50 million view. They reach over 50 million people. And he pulled his investment. He didn't pull his investment from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they suck. I'm sorry. If you're a Jaguars fan, I'm sorry, but they suck. So that just goes to show you, like I said, I don't think to him it was as important. And it is what it is. It is what it is. But this is happening. This is happening. There could have been some issues with censorship as well. I don't know. But this is the second network that we've seen that's been shut down within 4 weeks. And this just goes to show you, I've told you guys, us on independent media, we're not safe. That's why I tell you, subscribe to my newsletter. So I have your email and it creates an email list, because if they shut us down on YouTube, I have no way to get into contact with you if I don't have your email address. Just keeping it real. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Gamer for Ganja for Life. Once I started watching independent media, I never looked back. Yeah. Same here. Like, I have to watch that stuff so I can speak against it. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Debs Mo. Thank you so much. Pittsburgh dude said the whole channel was just the exploitation of Black issues to sell advertisements. Oh, Pittsburgh dude. Yikes. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's still like capitalist. Like I can't, I couldn't. But do I think that they should have been shut down? No, I don't think any of these networks should have been shut down. That's the thing about these investments. You know, when you have an investor, what happens when they stop investing? Thanks so much for the super chat. Haba. If Cornel West were put in charge, it would have succeeded. Thank you, Haba. That's a good point. You really need somebody who really care and are passionate, man. Like, I'm sorry, but Golden Silence said Sabby BNC were shaming into getting the jab for the whole year. That doesn't surprise. Again, the liberal talking point, it just doesn't surprise me. I'm sorry, but it is what it is. I do want to go ahead. I'm looking at the time here. So I do want to go ahead and get into my second story. So this one is pretty interesting. Guys, I've told you how I felt about Ro Khanna. And recently, Ro Khanna had an interview. Part of that interview was in reference to the Democrats and where do they go from here. And part of that interview was in reference to censorship. Now I'm going to play the first part first, which is him actually responding to a comment that AOC made. So let me go ahead and share that article from AOC. So AOC had another interview. Surprise, surprise. AOC's warning for Democrats, we're in trouble. Here we go. I'm just going to jump straight to the point here. As a young member of Congress, the first vote I ever cast was for Barack Obama, who was called a socialist and all this stuff. All of this rhetoric that we can see today has been the political reality my entire life. And so I never felt a nostalgia for something that never existed in my lifetime. I feel our politics has fundamentally changed. I'm going to make this a little bit larger for the people in the back. For the people in the back. Has fundamentally changed, whether it's for better or for worse, is people's determination. I don't know what's going on tonight. Sorry, guys. But I was never under the illusion that we can bring Manchin along. Now I'm going to scroll down here. I have the utmost respect and confidence in the president, but I just felt like we called two different plays on this one. I think that there is a sense among more senior members of Congress who have been around in different political times that we can get back to this time of buddy and backslapping, and we'll cut a deal and go into a room with some bourbon and some smoke, and you'll come out and work something out. I think there's a real nostalgia and belief that that time still exists, or that we can get back to that. But those days, she says, have been over for a long time. And the fact that Biden and others don't realize it could spell disaster in the fall's elections. With Biden's low approval numbers and the historic tendency of the president's party to lose, on average, 26 House seats in the midterms, the Democrats face an uphill battle to keep control of Congress. This is AOC. We need to acknowledge that this isn't just about middle of the road and increasingly narrow band of independent voters. I'm going to comment on that in just a second. This is really about the collapse of support among young people among the Democratic base who are feeling that they worked overtime to get this president elected and aren't necessarily being seen. Let me come out for just a second. I want to discuss that. I don't think she needs to downplay the number of independent voters. And I'm going to tell you why. The number of independent voters has increased since Joe Biden took office. Not making this up. I've gone over those stats on this channel multiple times. Those numbers have increased since Joe Biden took office. Independents in Arizona are the ones that helped Biden win Arizona? Independents. So I really wish that Republicans, Democrats, whatever you want to call yourself today, would stop downplaying the number of independents in this country. A lot of times, independents are often ignored. But you just saw how the 2020 election, how independents helped Joe Biden win a state that otherwise would have gone to Trump. Independents did that. And they are among the group that is now disapproving of Joe Biden's job as president. So I don't like her downplaying and saying a narrow band of, it's not a narrow band of independent voters. It's not as small as people think. I just want to point that out. The other part that's mentioned here, this is really about a collapse of support among young people among the Democratic base who feel they worked overtime to get this president elected. So there were a number of young people who came out and supported Joe Biden. That was more so, again, a vote against Trump, not so much a vote for Joe Biden. But I think AOC here is missing the overall picture. She's missing the big picture here. She's pointing out young voters. She's talking about independents as this narrow group. The problem that we face, or actually that they face, the Democrats, the majority of Americans do not vote. If they're really trying to win, those are the people they should be really trying to reach out to. I'll say it again. The majority of Americans do not vote. And yes, she's right about young people being upset, but it's not just young people who are pissed at Joe Biden. You have older people who are pissed at him too. People are not happy. But what is she leaving out in this discussion? The economy. The economy is the number one reason. I went over the poll numbers the other day. The number one concern for Americans in that poll was the economy. It's just a reality. Let me go back in and then I'm going to go to the video. So it goes on to say, let me take this down for a second. If the president does pursue and start to govern decisively using executive action and other tools at his disposal, I think we're in the game. No, you're still not in the game. I'll comment on that in a second. But if we decide to just kind of sit back for the rest of the year and not change people's lives, yeah, I do think we're in trouble. Okay, just sit back and not change people's lives. But wasn't AOC doing the same thing? The number of times that her and the rest of the squad could have made decisions when it came to voting for legislature, and AOC decided to go along with the Democratic establishment. She's talking about Joe Biden doing this, but she was doing exactly what Biden wanted her to do. And it was just a couple months ago that AOC was going on all these different talk shows telling people that Joe Biden was doing a great job. So, yes, there are things that Joe Biden can do by executive order, but let's go back. Let's go all the way back to force the vote. If you really want to talk about changing people's lives, AOC, why did you and the rest of the squad members not force the vote for Medicare for all? You want to talk about something that would have greatly changed people's lives? Giving everybody health care in this country. You didn't want to do it because that's not what the party wanted. And you wanted to be friends with people. All of them. All of them. And for people to say, well, they didn't have the votes and it wouldn't have worked and yada, yada. Whatever. It would have showed the Americans who those people really were. We would have been able to see all of their names, every one of them that voted against it. And you would know not to vote for them again. And then maybe, just maybe, that would have been enough frustration and anger to get everybody out in the streets and go to DC and protest in front of the White House. But we'll never know because it never happened. When you want to talk about something that would have greatly changed everyone's lives in this country, giving everybody health care during a pandemic should have been the number one thing. But AOC, like the rest of the squad, they wanted to be friends with Nancy Pelosi. That's the problem. Now, I do agree with what she said here about the younger people. Yeah, younger people are pissed. A lot of people are pissed. Let me show you what KHANNA said to this statement. This is going to show you just how out of touch KHANNA is. Thank you for the super chat, Troy. My almost 80-year-old friend from Detroit watches CNN and MSDNC all day long and thinks that if Dems lose next elections, then it will be due to Republicans cheating, not because both parties suck. Sigh. Oh, Troy, you got to educate them. You got to educate them, man. I know it's frustrating. Let's hear what Rokon Man had to say about this. Now, I want to give a shout out, of course, to Case Study QB. He's always doing fantastic work. Thanks so much for this clip here, Case. Listen to this, you guys. If this doesn't frustrate you, oh boy. Here we go.
In terms of the November election, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in recent days that she thinks that the Democratic Party is in trouble because of the president. Listen to what she said.
This is really about the collapse in support among young people, among the Democratic base, feeling like they are not, that they worked overtime to get this president elected, and they aren't necessarily being seen.
Is she right?
The president has done an extraordinary job. We've passed the American Rescue Plan. We've passed infrastructure. Here's the biggest thing we ought to highlight. $20 billion Intel is investing in Ohio. You talk about the revitalization of the Midwest. We're delivering. Let's pass the CHIPS Act, get it to the president. Of course, there are other things we ought to do, but this president has met the moment in very difficult circumstances.
Americans might disagree with you. His approval rating is only 40% in the latest Reuters Ipsos poll. Just before we go, I want to ask you, in terms of the November election, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in recent days that she thinks that the Democratic Party is in trouble because of the president. Listen to what she said.
Oh, thank you so much for that,
This is really
Eric.
about the collapse in support among young, the Democratic base, feeling like they are not, that they worked overtime to get this president elected, and they aren't necessarily being seen.
Is she right?
The president has done an extraordinary job. We've passed the
Sorry, guys. Let me try this again. He
In
just
terms of the November election, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in recent days that she thinks that the Democratic Party is in trouble because of the president. Listen to what she said.
This is really about the collapse in support among young people, among the Democratic base, feeling like they are not, that they worked overtime to get this president elected, and they aren't necessarily being seen.
Is she right?
The president has done an extraordinary job. We've passed the American Rescue Plan. We've passed infrastructure. Here's the biggest thing we ought to highlight. $20 billion Intel is investing in Ohio. You talk about the revitalization of the Midwest. We're delivering. Let's pass the CHIPS Act, get it to the president. Of course, there are other things we ought to do, but this president has met the moment in very difficult circumstances.
Americans might disagree with you. His approval rating is only 40% in the latest Reuters Ipsos poll. Just before we go, I want to ask you, in terms of the November election, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said.
So Rokana just told you that Joe Biden has met the moment. Did you guys hear that? Listen.
The Midwest, we're delivering. Let's pass the CHIPS Act, get it to the president. Of course, there are other things we ought to do, but this president has met the moment in very difficult circumstances.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say the circumstances weren't difficult, But I'll be damned if I would have gone on Fox News and said to everyone that Joe Biden has met the moment. He has not met the moment. Is meeting the moment kicking people off of unemployment? I don't think so. Do you think so? What did he meet the moment on? Of course, he's going to bring up the American Rescue Act. Didn't really rescue people, if you ask me. I said this before. If people were already struggling financially, they were a couple months behind. You give them a check, take this little bit of money. That's a temporary solution. It is just a Band-Aid. So no, he didn't really meet the moment on the American Rescue Act either. And I wish they didn't even call it that, because that wasn't a rescue per se. Joe Biden couldn't even give people the $2,000 stimulus checks. He tried to shortchange Americans on that. And who exactly did he help, Ro Khanna? Yes, I know there was the child tax credit, but that was only for people who had kids. And then they took it away. So Jeremy said, I must have missed the rescue. So how did he meet the moment? People still don't have a living wage. They didn't increase the minimum wage. Thousands of people are unemployed. There's still no health care for everyone in this country. Ro Khanna quickly went to bat to defend Joe Biden. And pay close attention to him. Because I told you, I did a story before where they were already talking about they wanted Ro Khanna, Bernie's campaign, wants Ro Khanna to run in 2024. And Ro Khanna said he doesn't want to run in 2024, but he is considering 2028. That is why you keep seeing him on TV. That's why you're seeing him so often. So he's doing everything he can to try to simp for Joe Biden and take up for Joe Biden because he's the chosen one. I want to remind everyone that Ro Khanna is one of the politicians that says that he's progressive. I'm a progressive. You should follow him on Twitter, by the way. It's quite interesting and very funny. If you want some comedy, I'm progressive. Ro Khanna, who takes thousands and thousands of dollars from Silicon Valley. So deep enriched in the tech industry. Ro Khanna. You got to watch out for him. Keep an eye on this one, you guys. Keep a close eye on Ro Khanna. I'm going to go to some of the comments and then I'm going to show you the next clip, which is also concerning about him as well. Thank you so much for the super chat. The Traveler. Bernie Sanders is set to reintroduce Medicare for all soon. Midterms are around the corner. And of course, Bernie isn't going to fight to put it up for a vote. So yes, I did know about that as well. And again, the Traveler is right. See how they only want to, let's really push this now because the midterms, we got to think about the midterms. We got to make sure Democrats keep their seats this year. If they were that passionate about Medicare for all, again, like I said, why didn't they try to force the vote? All this theater. They only seem to want to be for an issue when it's time to get reelected, when they feel they're about to lose a couple of seats. Because last year, we were keeping count of how many members of the squad, Bernie Sanders, how often they were tweeting about Medicare for all, and they had pretty much stopped talking about it. Cori Bush told you herself when Max Blumenthal interviewed her at that Capitol protest for the evictions. He asked her, why didn't you force the vote? Cori Bush's response was, that's Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal's bill. But you ran on it. All of them ran on it. Were you thinking about that then? It didn't matter back then when you were running for election that it was Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal's bill. That was just an excuse. See what I'm saying? So pay close attention to Twitter, because in about a month or so, you're going to see all of them. All of a sudden, they're going to be tweeting about Medicare for all again. When just a couple of months ago, they were calling it access to health care. It's ridiculous. What a clown show. What a fucking clown show. Thanks so much for the super chat, Troy. I introduced my friend to your channel and to some videos of RBN, and he's slow to come around, but his brother is more radical, trying to promote RBN. Thank you so much, Troy. That's really sweet of you. I thought I saw a super chat from Ashura. I thought I did. I saw something. Yep. Thanks so much for the super chat, Ashura. See how fast Roe started talking to defend Biden? Jumped right in. Let me go ahead and defend the boss man. Go ahead and jump in and save Joe. That's how it works. That's how it works. Now, that was the only thing that Ro Khanna said. He was also questioned about social media. Listen to this. And I want you to pay close attention to how he contradicts his statement. Listen to this. Again, Joe Biden, 40% approve. Here we go.
Political discourse in this country.
Oh, wait a minute. Can we boost the volume on this too, Eric? Thanks. Oh, I guess I could have done this myself now that I see volume booster. Okay, thank you. All right. Thanks to Case Study QB for this clip as well. Here we go. The topic is social media. Listen to what he says. Remember, he is pretty much owned by the tech industry. Just keep that in mind.
Has sunk to new lows. Everybody's yelling at each other, and much of the reason why they're yelling at each other is because of social media. Is social media ruining this country?
No, but social media needs to do better. Several things that they need to do better. They ought not to have incitement of violence. They ought not to discriminate against viewpoints, allow for free speech, and they ought to make sure that teenagers aren't getting manipulated in ways that are causing depression and suicide. So absolutely, there need to be more smarter regulations on social media.
Congress.
What?
Discourse in this country has sunk to new lows.
He just contradicted himself. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm going to try to do this volume thing. Exit full screen. Okay. And then go over here to volume booster. Oh, it did do it. Maybe this video volume is just low. Maybe it's just the video. That's okay. It worked for the last one, but not for this one. Okay. Listen to what he says again about social media. I want you to catch him. I want you to catch him and his contradiction. Listen to this. Oh, I can't. Let me see. Okay, here we go.
Everybody's yelling at each other, and much of the reason why they're yelling at each other is because of social media. Is social media ruining this country?
No, but social media needs to do better. Several things that they need to do better. They ought not to have incitement of violence. They ought not to discriminate against viewpoints, allow for free speech, and they ought to make sure that teenagers aren't getting manipulated in ways that are causing depression and suicide. So absolutely, there need to be more smarter regulations on social media.
Congress.
Boom. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. He said that, well, yes, social media should not have hate speech. They should also have free speech. And then he goes on to say, yes, there needs to be more regulations on social media. The what? Did anybody else hear that? Somebody, please explain that to me. Please explain that to me. That doesn't make any sense. If you say that you shouldn't have such and such, such and such, and such and such, but you say that they should allow for free speech, then you come back and say, yes, there should be more restrictions on social media. Which is it? If you believe that social media should allow free speech, see, this is where I get people on the free speech one. This is the thing about censorship that a lot of people, they don't want to admit to this, but I'm sorry, but it's true. If you say that you're anti-censorship, to me, that means everything. That means everything. If you say you're a free speech absolutist, to me, that means everything. Everything. So how are you going to say that social media needs to allow for free speech, but then you just mention the things that social media should not allow? Then you come back and say, yeah, there should be more restrictions on social media. Did anybody catch that? Remember who his donors are. Tech. Thanks for the comment on Rockfin Jean. Wife and him stocks in military weapon companies. Yes. And I think I showed this on here before, but I can show it again. You wanted me to refresh? Is that what you said, Eric? I think everybody got it. You need me to refresh it again? Refresh. Let's see. Oh, I don't know if that's your hand or my hand. Sorry, guys. People watching are probably like, what's going on?
Is social media ruining this country?
No, but social media needs to do better. Several things that they need to do better. They ought not to have incitement of violence. They ought not to discriminate against viewpoints, allow for free speech, and they ought to make sure that teenagers aren't getting manipulated in ways that are causing depression and suicide. So absolutely, there need to be more smarter regulations on social media.
Congress. Political discourse in this country has sunk to new lows. Everybody's yelling at each other, and much of the reason why they're yelling at each other is because of social media. Is social media ruining this country?
No, but social media needs to do better. Several things that they need to do better. They ought not to have incitement of violence. They ought not to discriminate against viewpoints, allow for free speech, and they ought to make sure that teenagers aren't getting manipulated in ways that are causing depression and suicide. So absolutely, there need to be more smarter regulations on social media.
Congress, political discourse in this country has sunk.
I'm done. Like that didn't make any sense. That didn't make any sense to me. Need to allow more free speech, but they need to be regulated. I don't know if the host caught that or not. I'll take those comments on Eric, sorry. Geez, I got to start calling Eric Roger. I'm all over the place. Thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows on Rockfin. Sabs, I didn't know you were going to have someone on here for Campaign for New York Health. I got on here late because I was writing an email to you. Scott, I think I met you once, and I'm trying to get people from InPan to show up at Senator Maj. Excuse me, I can't, LDR, I can't see the whole thing, but Senator Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins' district, who, despite having a majority of co-sponsors to pass the New York Health Act in the Senate, she pulled a Cuomo and said, let the feds do it. I am in constant talks with Teresa, mostly about public banking and worker co-ops, so I know she's down. Ting Barrow told me about the bike ride to show up at the Speaker Heastie's office, but I suggested to Ting we post signs in Heastie and Cousins district about how they refuse to bring them up for a vote. LOL, Sab, you got to let a brother know in advance next time you bring someone on from New York State. Just kidding. You don't have to let me know, but it would have been good to know because everything he said about Stu Cousins, I co-signed. Last year, she pulled the New York Health Act and the New York Public Banking Act out of their respective committees when they were about to pass both bills. Senior Health Chair put back in, she pulled it out again. Giving context, New York State, I don't know if Scott mentioned this, but New York State is #1 union state in the United States, at least when it comes to public sector unions. Union leadership who own stock in private health insurance make money off of selling insurance to their members to help secure their elected leadership with their members. So they are a major lobbying force in Albany. They got co-sponsors going behind Senate and Assembly authors back to Cousins and Heastie saying, please don't bring this up for a vote to the unions will roast me. Sabs, this is why I told a member of Co-op Ride who is primarying and a senator, we need a New York State agency called Cooperative Business Administration to do for co-ops what the federal SBA does for small businesses. We need to grow co-ops in this state to surpass unions and corporations to become the major lobbying force in Albany. The guy who invested the most in BNC was Indian, not African American, had no vested interest in making it something. On top of that, J.C. Watts is a Black Republican from the state of Oklahoma, was a pull yourself up by the bootstrap guy, so you know he's not for reparations. Matter of fact, I don't know if they ever did segments on reparations. They talk too much about CRT instead. Thanks, Stargazer, for the tip on Rockfin. People go into Congress to make bank. They get benefits that normal tax aren't allowed to get. They gave themselves a raise with with the defense spending bill. Wake the F up, America. And thank you for this tip on Rockfin, crone of anarchy. AOC, really this naive, or is she intentionally oblivious? I think she's intentionally oblivious. Thank you so much for those on Rockfin. All right. So keep your eye on Ro Khanna. Again, like I said, he's saying he may run in 2028. So that would explain a lot of his talking points, but I never really expected him to fight for us or anything like that anyway. But the fact that he receives a lot of donations from big tech, that is very concerning. That says a lot about where censorship could go. If he got a higher level position, if he was elected president of the United States, he's already in bed with big tech. That is not good for any of us, whether you're an independent media or not. That is scary and that is concerning. The guy can't even really tell you what free speech is. He says one thing out one ear and the other thing out the other. He doesn't even know what he's saying half the time when he was in that interview. That was really ridiculous. Thank you so much for the super chat, Troy. I didn't believe Sane Progressive when she warned us that Bernie was sheepdog for the Dems. I can't believe I thought she was crazy back then. And thank you for the super chat as well. Maybe teens are suicidal because of economic homelessness, and do nothing Dems are pathetic. GOP won't help either. That's a good point as well. Thank you for mentioning that. That was one thing that they said, and I'm just like, why? Oh, what was that? Okay. That is one thing I will say is that why? Yes, I know social media has its issues and has its problems, but why not bring up the fact that the economy is a disaster and people aren't making a living wage? Why not bring that up? Maybe that's part of the reason also why some teenagers are depressed and upset right now, because they've seen their parents lose their jobs and they're trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet. They don't want to talk about that though. I'm going to go ahead into my final story. And this is about Nomiki Konst. So she went back on Fox. Sorry. She went back on Fox News on the Faulkner Report. She's been on there before. I've talked about her on there before. I don't know what happens when she goes onto this show, but they seem to trip her up for whatever reason. I don't know. She's not as much on the offense. Like she should be more on the offensive side, right? But it seems like when she goes onto that show, for whatever reason, she tends to back down. And I don't know why that is, but this was not a good look. I got a lot to say. Let me go ahead and add this to the stream here. Yeah, it doesn't let me. It says remove. Okay, add to the stream. All right. So also shout out to Case Study QB for this as well. So Nomiki Konst asked why Americans are leaning back away from the Democratic Party in the latest polls. So that's what they're talking about here. Again, it's about Joe Biden's sinking poll numbers, which is not a surprise to a lot of us. And so here we go. I do want to make sure the volume. Okay. Here we go.
Nomiki, I'm going to come to you first and just get your initial.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Let me try to refresh the page. Okay. I think going forward, I think I need to do the videos the other way I was doing it, because I noticed the difference. Let's see.
Listen, I mean, this is a very tough economy, but, you know, when you look into those numbers and the polls and you dig in a little bit more, you see that.
Yeah, it's glitchy. Hold on.
A quarter of Americans are blaming the pandemic. Another polls, and they can influence how people feel about things. And obviously, you know, if you.
Okay, I'm trying to get this at the beginning. Okay, so here we go.
Nomiki, I'm going to come to you first and just get your initial thoughts on why you think Democrats in those particularly important categories for voters are leaning back away from your party.
Listen, I mean, this is a very tough economy, but, when you look into those numbers and the polls and you dig in a little bit more, you see that a quarter of Americans are blaming the pandemic. Another quarter of Americans are blaming corporate price gouging, like the oil companies who are jacking up gas prices right now for their benefit, and Congress is now investigating. It is historic that, as we all know, in the midterms, whatever president it is, their party is not doing as well. But if you even see those numbers, it's a statistical tie. So, it's wonky and people don't want to, polls are polls and they can influence how people feel about things. And obviously, if you really do want to look at the polls, Donald Trump right now is doing his best ever.
Oh boy,
and it's exactly where Joe Biden is right now at his lowest ever.
Okay, but we don't have Donald Trump. We have one president at a time, and his name is Joe Biden. And on it.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. Listen, I'm so sick and tired of people bringing up Donald Trump. And I am glad that the host said that, because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm hearing it from establishment Democrats, and then I'm hearing it from left independent media too. Stop talking about Trump. Donald Trump is not president anymore. I don't know why people are tending to make this comparison. They're continuing to talk about him. This man is not president anymore. Every time you bring him up in these discussions, when talking about what Joe Biden is supposed to be doing right now for this country, all you're doing is giving Trump more relevance. People would forget about him and he would fade away if you don't continue to bring up what Trump did. How would you guys feel if I came on here every night and I was like, but Trump, but Trump, but Trump, but Trump? You probably wouldn't be too happy with me. The current president of the United States right now is Joe Biden. It's not Donald Trump. And Joe Biden has to answer for his behavior, has to answer for the things that he is doing right now while he's in office. And you have people like NOMIKI KONST, like Anna Kasparian, that whole TYT group, Majority Report group, David Dole, Kyle Kulinski, Crystal Ball, all of these people that made their money off of Bernie Sanders campaigns, they still refuse to let go of Orange Man bad. The number of times they are ignoring the fact that this is 100% Joe Biden. Last time I checked, you want to go back to the stimulus checks. Let's go back to that. That was under Joe Biden. Trump didn't promise us $2,000 and give us half the amount or less than the amount. Joe Biden did that. Call them out. And when they won't do it, what that tells me is that at the end of the day, they're Democrats. They're still defending the Democratic Party because they still want you at the end of the day to vote for the Democratic Party. Whether it's a progressive going through, whether it's a Democratic socialist going through, they want those people to go in through the Democratic Party, and they still keep you voting for the fucking party that is screwing you over. Still have you voting for the same people who are doing nothing. And the number of excuses I've seen them make for Joe Biden is ridiculous. I got heated, but it needed to be said. And I'm glad she said that. Listen to the rest of it. It does not get any better from here. I will tell you that.
At least half of what you mentioned, he's underwater, the pandemic. Remember, he said he was going to come in and fix it. What was he going to do? Matt, he was going to shut down the virus. That has not happened. But NOMIKI, I appreciate your love of history. Matt?
No. If you look at the polls or the crosstabs there, the number one issue is the economy and inflation. And 63% of respondents disapprove of how Biden has handled that. That's not just a red flag, that's a flashing red warning signal. But also, this poll is historic for other reasons. as you saw the generic ballot there, Republicans lead by 2 points. That's the first time NBC has had a lead for Republicans on that question since September of 2014. Ooh. And later that year, Republicans elected the largest House majority since the 1920s. That's historic. And if you look, I think Afghanistan proved to be Biden's Katrina moment, where it undermined his argument of competence and the adult in the room, and it exposed him, and it hasn't gotten better for him since.
All right, let's talk money. Biden's approval on the economy also at an all-time low with just 33%.
Guys, I'm sorry. This whole talking point that he just gave, well, his decisions with Afghanistan, it exposed him. Okay, yes, a lot of people were upset about his decisions with Afghanistan. It is what it is. I didn't agree with what he did with Afghanistan. I think he did it the wrong way. Obviously, he put sanctions on Afghanistan, and those kids are suffering and people are starving in Afghanistan because of the decisions that Joe Biden made. But let's be real here. Let's call a spade a spade. Because Joe Biden revealed himself a long time ago. Joe Biden co-wrote the crime bill. Joe Biden said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle. Joe Biden wouldn't let Anita Hill's witnesses testify. Hello. Let's go back to that when we talk about believe women. Joe Biden accused of sexual assault by Tara Reade, and people tended to be shocked by that. And so many people came out and smeared Tara Reade because of that. And I'm like, do you not remember what happened against Anita Hill? When Anita Hill had evidence against Clarence Thomas, and it was Joe Biden was the one who said, no, your witnesses cannot testify. So let's stop pretending like Joe Biden just revealed who he was last year. He revealed his whole ass many decades ago. He has been in office for over 40 years. We always knew who Joe Biden was. Let's be real. Let's stop pretending that he was this saint. Go back into the video.
Of people approving of its handling by Biden. 38% blame the president for rising inflation, which hit 7.9% in February. I'll come in reverse order. Matt.
No, again, that's a huge, huge issue. And as you mentioned before, his numbers among Latinos and African Americans is also troublesome. Look, Republicans have been making really quiet gains, steady gains, though, over the last couple of years. Democrats have taken them for granted. They assume that all they care about is either immigration or free stuff, when all they really care about is all what the rest of us care about, which is the economy, making sure their streets are safer and their houses are safer and their kids get a quality education. It's not rocket scientists, and it's certainly not pandering.
Nomiki.
Well, I got to hand it to you, Matt. Your jujitsu, your communications jujitsu is amazing. The fact that you mentioned 2014 is the last time Republicans did better. Again, that was a midterm year. This is historic. That is how it works. Everybody knows that. But you do a great job at that. Also, I mean, let's see. I would like to know how much we're losing support among minorities. It's actually quite small. And you are gaining a very, very, very tiny, almost not even.
Pause. I think Nomiki is missing the point here. How much support are we losing amongst minorities? It's actually very, very small. You can't afford to lose any support from minorities. Nomiki, you've been in politics. Your mom was in politics. You know how this works for the Democratic Party. You can't afford to lose black voters. Dems don't win without black votes. The fact that she's trying to downplay this and make it seem like it's not that big of a deal, bullshit. It's a big deal. I just told you, independents helped Joe Biden win Arizona. Bet you he won't win it next time around. If you think that black voters in Georgia are going to come out for Joe Biden the way they did last time, let's remember there's no Trump this time. And I've talked to a lot of black people in the Atlanta area, and they are not happy with Joe Biden because he made promises to them as well. What happened to the free HBCUs? What happened to that? I thought he was going to take away student loan debt for kids that went to HBCUs. What? So let's stop pretending that it's just a little teeny amount. He shouldn't be losing support from them at all. Don't you understand that? What does that say to you? And keep in mind, those are just the black people they polled. That doesn't include a lot of the younger black people. And that little teeny amount will be a lot higher. Trust. Go ahead defending Joe Biden.
Relevant number of minority support. Let's go back to your numbers, which is important because the economy is in this situation because the corporations, the multinational corporations, which fund the lobbyists,
you do
which
realize
fund your
that the price of gas was up by like $1.92 before we got into a situation where we told Russia we wouldn't buy any more oil and the numbers started to really burst.
I'm not blaming Putin.
Okay, but what about the cost of bread?
What I will blame,
that doesn't have anything to do with the oil companies or the big corporations.
It has to do with CEOs price gouging. They're price gouging everywhere to an effect that Congress is now going to investigate it. If the Republican Party is blind to this because they take donations,
my favorite part of your argument, NOMIKI, was arguing how many blacks, Latinos, independents, and women don't like you. It's like that was the argument. It's great to have you both. It's always.
Ouch. How do you let the Republican network put you on blast like that? How do you let the host on the Republican network out left you? That's what just happened there. I don't know if NOMIKI is doing her research before she goes into these shows or not, but the host is actually correct. She had to point out, you realize that the gas prices were already starting to increase before the Ukraine-Russia invasion, before the sanctions were put on. Then NOMIKI comes back and goes, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not blaming Putin. It's, the CEOs are price gouging. The CEOs are, again, at the end of the day, no one on this panel got down to the root problem. Why are the CEOs allowed to price gouge? Why are they allowed to increase the gas prices? Why do we have an issue right now with the supply chain? All of this at the end of the day goes back to capitalism. There's no maximum amount. If they want to keep increasing the price for food, they can. I don't see anybody stopping them. If they want to continue to increase the price for gas, they can. Again, who is stopping them? And at the end of the day, even though prices have increased and are continuing to increase, you have a president of the United States that still does not want to cancel student loan debt for people. You have a president of the United States that doesn't want to give everybody universal health care. Those are two things that he can do by executive order. So this is really not a time for you to point fingers at Trump or anybody else. You should be pointing fingers directly at Joe Biden. Let me come out of this video. This is the point that I really want to drive home. The issues that Joe Biden can solve right now. NOMIKI is blaming the CEOs. Why don't you blame Joe Biden for not canceling student loan debt, for not giving everybody health care? Hell, you had 8 Democrats vote against a $15 minimum wage? Honey, this is all in your party. Your party. This is not, the Republicans are not in power right now. These are the Democrats who are doing these things. You got Democrats sitting in the Senate They don't even want you guys to have a $15 minimum wage, even though if you look at inflation, it should actually be higher than that. Those were Democrats. And Nomiki knows that, and she's not going to say that because at the end of the day, she's a part of the Democratic Party. Both of those parties serve corporations, they protect corporations, and they protect capital. They are not in place to protect or help us. They just need us to vote for them. That's it. And this goes back to something that Roger Meadows has said time and time again. This is why we really don't need political parties. If we didn't have political parties, can you imagine how easy it would be to just bring people together in this country over the class issue? To get everybody to focus on the fact that you have all these corporations, that you have all of these banks, which people don't want to mention, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, controlling every damn thing that happens in this country. More people would pay attention to that if they weren't so fixated on having this ideology that they have to belong to a certain party. It's like when I lived in North Carolina. When I first moved there, people told me, which team are you? Which team am I? What do you mean? You're either a Tar Heels fan or you're a Duke fan. I didn't like either one. I wasn't a fan of either school. They said, no, you live in North Carolina. You have to pick one. That's what it reminds me of. Now, after everything that I've showed you tonight, the stories about AOC and KHANNA, the story with Nomiki, when we talk about the Democratic Party, and they're still thinking that progressives can actually come in and change this party and make a change when history has shown us otherwise. It's really not a good way to think about this. And so I want to talk about this and use a sports analogy. Let's go to football. You know, it is very rare that someone can leave a well-established team and go to a team that, let's say, is not as good and turn that whole team around. Some coaches have been able to do that. Players, the most recent person that I know that has done that is Tom Brady. Tom Brady left the Patriots, went to Tampa Bay. The coach of Tampa Bay trusted Tom Brady. I know this. I saw the interview. He actually trusted him, and he believed that Tom Brady could bring that team to a Super Bowl. The first year he was with Tampa Bay, what did Tom Brady do? He brought that team to a Super Bowl. Not only did he bring them there, but they won. But there was the coach who believed in Tom Brady. He trusted him. When you look at the Democratic Party, when you look at Congress, you look at the House of Representatives. The person running the show is Nancy Pelosi. Let's pretend she's the coach. You had a handful of progressives come in believing that they could change the House. But they couldn't, because the person in charge, Nancy Pelosi, she didn't believe in them. Not only did she not believe in them, she didn't believe in their policies. She didn't believe in their rhetoric. She didn't believe that that was the way to go. And Nancy Pelosi, she is aligned with her donors, and they are very corporate. And this goes back to something that CJ mentioned a couple weeks ago. even though members of the squad may not have taken or accepted, or I would argue some of this for some of them, corporate money. But Nancy Pelosi sure as hell does. And she answers to her donors. And as part of her job, she is to protect the Democratic Party and to make sure that people like the progressives who went in don't change the party. She wants things to stay the same. At the end of the day, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to win. You get what I'm saying? The Tampa Bay coach wanted to win. Tom Brady wanted to win. Nancy Pelosi don't want to win. She just wants to fundraise. That's the difference. So the idea that you are going to bring in people like AOC, you got AOC and Ro Khanna, they're not even on the same page, and Ro Khanna's supposed to be progressive just like her. They're not even on the same page. What needs to happen is those progressives who went into the Democratic Party, they need to leave the Democratic Party and they need to start their own damn party. A third party. Hell, you can call it whatever you want. But it is very clear that the coach in the House is not going to let them come in and run the show. I hope you guys understood that sports analogy. And if you don't know anything about football, maybe you know something a little bit of it now. I don't know. But that was the closest analogy I could give for you. Sorry, JB's a lot better at these than me. Patty R says sounds like the Bears. The point is, the person who's in charge, if they don't want you to move forward, you're not going to move forward. I think I have super chats. Okie doke. Thanks, Eric. Thank you so much for the super chat. Troy, Biden looks like that grumpy old man puppet. Oh man, I could see that. I could see that. Thank you for the super chat, Black in the Empire. Get him, Sabby. Black in the Empire! Guys, follow Black in the Empire on Twitter. He's awesome, especially when it comes to politics. Thanks for the super chat, The Traveler. How does Afghanistan expose him, but not his 40 plus years screwing over Black folk? Right? The Traveler knows what's up. Thanks for the super chat, Troy. But hey, at least the stock market is okay. Thanks for the super chat, Cool Blue. In 2020, Republicans lost the U.S. House popular vote by -3. They ended up with 213 seats. Majority is 218. In 2022, Republicans can lose nationally by -1 and will flip the House. Cool Blue, always bringing the stats. I love it. I love it. A kid said Sabby Nomiki Kunst has more than 60K subscribers, yet her streams receive less than a couple hundred views. Why? Because folks are up on her game. And she's on Majority Report. Like, what the? Bruh. I don't even know what to say. I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric. I think I went past my time a little bit here. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Sabby, if you look up Gallup Poll Monthly, you will see that month to month, we indies swing from 40% to 48%. DNR stay in the 20-something% range, making us indies the swing vote, maybe not evenly distributed when it comes to the U.S. Senate/congressional districts. But know this, if Blacks, especially Freedmen, ADOS, all registered indie, we'd be swing vote of the swing vote DNR reward respect, fickleness, not loyalty, leverage. Good point. Thanks for the tip, Gene. So tiring, all politicians. I hear you. Thanks for these tips as well, Roger. Ro Con you. Ro Con, you say social media needs to do better. No, mofo, you need to do better. A better answer would have been big tech breakup and enforce those antitrust laws. What? Right? What would this debate look like if we had no parties to defend? Georgia voters never got their promised checks. Joe could have went to West Virginia and rallied against both of their senators. This is what your senators are preventing me from doing. Joe can still issue an executive order for Medicare for all, allow Medicare to negotiate for lower drug prices, forgive student loan debt relief for those who would have already become homeless due to a pandemic, and even before. Well said, Roger. Well said. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Michael Pan. I hope it's Pan. If not Pan, Michael Pan. I think it's Pan though. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. It's been an interesting night. I hope you learned something here. I'll be back tomorrow. I have someone coming on tomorrow as part of the segment is going to talk about how to grow your own food. This is a 2-part segment. So she's going to come on and talk about how to properly store food that you grow. That's something that you need to know. She's going to talk about the water issue and how you can conserve water. That's something you also need to know, and how to store water so that you don't end up with any type of bacteria as well. She's going to focus about it more on a smaller scale. And then next week, Logan is going to come on to talk about how to grow your own food for those who live in an apartment, because Logan lives in an apartment in New York City, and he created a whole video of how he actually still grows his own food, even though he lives in an apartment. These are things we need to know. This is why I say we need to hear from everyday people. You need to hear from people who are actually growing their own food. I'm tired of you guys like always having to listen to people who are philosophers or so-and-so expert of this and so-and-so knows this theory. Fuck that. I want you to hear from people who are actually doing the work. And that's what this is about. So definitely, you guys, come back tomorrow. I'll be back here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time doing the damn thing. So other than that, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.